Good evening and welcome to UFO Line. I'm Gene Huff here with Bob Lazar. Bob, are you set for the show?
No. In fact, this is the last place I want to be tonight.
That's the spirit. Our guest tonight really needs no introduction in the Las Vegas listening area. He's got a famous family name and he's made an infamous name for himself in UFO research. And that guest, of course, is John Lear. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Gene.
So, John, I think a good place to start might be, of all the stories that fly around about you and ufology, I think one that...
Are we jumping right into this?
Right. One that a lot of people don't know is how did you get interested in ufology? What was the catalyst that actually made you pay attention to what's going on?
Well, you know, my dad was always talking about this stuff. He had made a sighting, and I'd never been all that much interested because I didn't think there was anything to it. As a matter of fact, 1980, I remember corresponding with John Andrews of Testers, that there was nothing to it. Then but I'd heard all the stories that all the guys hears. But in 1985, a friend of mine who I flew with in Laos during the Southeast Asian conflict, he flew A-10s. He came to Nellis Air Force Base on his way somewhere, and he came out. He hadn't seen him in about 10 years, and in the conversation I asked him where all he'd been based since I'd seen him, and one of the places he mentioned was Bentwaters, England. And that's the United States Air Force Base about 70 miles northeast of London. And I said, oh, Bentwaters, well, that's supposedly where that flying saucer crashed in 1980. He said, no, John, not supposedly, it did. He said, I didn't see it because I was confined to quarters, but I know the guys who did. And he gave me the names of Major Ted Conrad, Colonel Chuck Halt, and General Williams. And I said, what are you telling me? That this stuff is true? And he said, yeah, it sure is. And that's what started me off. So I spent the next 2 years, I thought I had known a lot of secret stuff. I worked on and off for the CIA for many years, and I thought I knew a lot of stuff. But this is one big thing I missed out. So that's what started me.
Okay, if anyone would like to give us a call, you can call 731-1230 or hit star 1230 on your cell phone. John, what's the latest? I mean, you're always good for an outrageous prediction. Why don't we get your comments on some of the recent happenings? What are your thoughts on the alien autopsy film?
I think it's not real. It's just personal opinion. There's no particular reason, but it doesn't look like a real alien as if I'd seen a real alien before.
So you think somebody faked it for money?
Could be. I really don't know what the story is.
Well, Bob has a giant list of past John Lear predictions and statements and accusations that he'd like to go through to see which ones you still stand by and which ones you've changed your mind on. So, Bob, you want to go ahead and hit the list?
Sure I do, Dean. Okay, let's see here. Let's start at the bottom. The driver shot Kennedy. The driver of the limo shot Kennedy. What do you think about that?
I'm not convinced still not convinced that he didn't do it. Of course, everybody's dropped it by now, but I went back.
But you still think it's possible?
It's possible. I went back and viewed some film that a guy had that was really close up, and he was trying to sell me on...
What film? The only one was the Zapruder film.
Yeah, it was enlarged from one of the supposed second or third generation films, and he was trying to show me the pink of the driver's hands on the wheel while this supposed shooting scenario was going on, but it wasn't all that convincing.
Okay. The 5 square mile roof over Area 51.
Yeah, that was...
Wrong. Okay.
Okay, 1 and 1.
The 2 billion aliens living along the mountains or inside the mountains along Highway 93.
That was pretty far-fetched, I have to admit.
It's hard to believe that even you said that.
Okay, I got to save my favorite ones for last. The underground tunnel from Boulder Dam to Area 51.
There's underground tunnels all over the place. And
so you think somewhere around the dam you can get in a tunnel and drive to Area 51 underground?
At Nellis or anywhere you want. Edwards, George Air Force Base.
You can drive from Boulder to Edwards underground?
It's not. I don't think you can drive it. They have these, I think they call them maglev or something.
They got a maglev train in there?
Yeah.
You must be kidding me.
No question, no doubt about it in my mind. As a matter of fact, I talked
And they built that without anyone seeing them dig the tunnel.
Yeah.
What do they do with the dirt and the rock that was...
Well, I don't think the dirt... I think it's the process of digging the holes that the dirt is decomposed. There was a...
Decomposed the dirt, okay.
The patent that I showed you a couple years ago that the two Los Alamos guys got for that train, or for that digging equipment, that uses the same process.
But that would be a major undertaking to construct a maglev train under there.
You have no idea how far those things extend. I talked with a guy who works in L.A. with a guy who worked at Holloman, and he talked, they talked about getting on this maglev and going different places. It's just not out here. It's all over the place. Yeah, I'm going to stick by that one.
Okay, don't call Acid Rescue. We're here with John Lear. If you want to give us a call, dial 731-1230.
Okay, let's see here. No, I don't want to say that one yet. What about the people or food for aliens? What about that old concept?
I'll probably stick by that. Yeah,
You're kidding me.
Well, not. Yeah, I'll have to stick by that. Yeah.
Okay. What about that little story about abductees getting these implants, and then at some point in time, someone's going to have this device that resembles a TV remote control and be able to control these guys all en masse to do whatever they want?
I'll stick by that one.
I'm getting scared. Okay. What about the stealth fighter? The liquid crystals on the top and bottom of the stealth fighter, so from above it looks like the ground, and from below it looks like the sky.
They didn't use that on the stealth fighter, but it may have been used on another airplane.
Which airplane was that?
Too bad they can't see your expression.
Okay. 70 different species of aliens?
80.
80.
There's probably 80 have visited Earth.
Okay, well, where do you get a number like that?
From the different drawings that the people have made of the different types.
All the drawings I've seen, with the exception, did I say that?
Is that a word?
With the exception of the reptilian type guy and the pickle man, the remainder of them look essentially the same, exactly like the grade.
No, there's books and books and books of all the different types.
Okay.
John, was that your watch alarm?
The jailer, I guess it was a jail, down somewhere on the Nellis Range to put all the UFO researchers at one point in time.
Yeah, if I said that, I was a little bit off base there.
But not off base with those other things.
No.
Okay. Now, we're getting into my favorite ones here. Well, not yet. Reptilian, since we mentioned them.
There is a reptilian race, and
Where does this come from?
Where did he come from?
No, where does this information come from? The reason I bring up reptilians is because at one time I called, you had a UFO drawing somewhere that you showed me, and I thought it looked pretty neat and wanted to get a print of it. And you said I had to call Bill Hamilton or something like that.
Yeah.
And you gave me his number. I called and got his wife or girlfriend on the phone, and she said that Bill's not here right now. He's down the block because one of the neighbors was having some problems with a reptilian. And I thought it was a joke, and she was serious. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, he was out hassling her in the front yard. Now, this always has left an impression with me that these reptilian guys are out walking around hassling people on the street. And
well, that's in California.
I'm not familiar, or I don't remember that story, but the fact is there is a reptilian race, and they are around, and they don't walk down the streets. But they're there. They exist.
So you think they're an advanced race?
Absolutely.
Apparently like the Greys? And
way ahead of us.
Is there any contact with them now?
Supposedly at the test site, there has been contact with a species called a reptilian.
What, that they're working there in some capacity, or they're just in captivity?
They're just there. The story was related to me about a guard who had to be, or guards who had to be shown photos about 3 to 4 weeks, just flash photos of these species before they were put on duty, so that they weren't sitting there and guarding something, and one of these things came walking down the hall, and these guys dropped dead of a heart attack, seeing this weird-looking thing.
What do you have any ideas about the motivations, and what is this a joint venture with humans and the reptilians, similar to the old stories about the Greys, or exactly what is there?
I don't know what the story is. No.
I just can't buy that you believe all this stuff.
Well, when we first met
I know. I didn't believe in flying saucers.
You didn't believe in flying saucers. And
yeah, but still.
It's kind of like George Knapp saying, in some of his interviews that I have gone way overboard. You guys got to remember that I've got about a 3 or 4 year head start on you guys.
I guarantee you in 3 to 4 years I'm not going to be saying yes to these questions. Okay, Venus, nice place to live. Now.
Yeah, I know you have trouble with that.
I have a lot of trouble with that because there's a sulfuric acid atmosphere. The surface temperature is close to 800
Have you been there?
No, but probes have gone there from our country and other countries, Russia specifically. And
you don't think we can doctor the information? The whole point of
why would we? What is the big secret? So what if it's habitable? But
we want people to think that we are the only ones.
Who wants people to think that?
Whoever runs the show here. They want people to think that we are the only people. There couldn't be life on Mars. There couldn't be life on Venus.
Do you think there's life on Venus?
Probably.
Is one of them that lady that shows up to the UFO conventions?
I don't know. But there's
what do you think the surface temperature is on Venus around the equators?
It's probably like Earth. Now, I know you're going to give. I know you're.
What about the clouds?
I know you're going to give me that stuff about the clouds, and I don't know how it works. And like we say, we're dealing in opinion. I don't have any facts. I haven't been there, and neither do you. But that's the famous old Bob Lazar comeback. Have you been there? No, I haven't been there, but neither have you. And you're just taking data that the government sells you on what they want you to know.
Okay.
And let's jump into it, because I know you're coming up. Atmosphere
on the moon
and water on the moon.
Yeah.
In certain places there is. There's not a great deal, but there's enough to.
Do you think there is that 3-mile high or 30-mile high dome with that city inside?
It's a 6-mile high tower, and I don't know if there's a city inside. It kind of looks like an antenna, but yeah, the evidence is pretty good that it's there. And for those that haven't heard about it, it's in the Hoagland tape Moon-Mars connection. It's about a 3-hour tape, and he goes through Orbiter, Pioneer, and a lot of the other data, and shows where this tower is. It's right directly in the center of Sinus Medai, and when the moon is full, it's in the direct center of the moon.
So do the astronauts that orbited and walked on the moon, are they aware of this and staying quiet?
Yeah, they are. And I had dinner with one of the 4 psychologists that was assigned to the Apollo astronauts. And they assigned them psychologists, not so much of the weird stuff they saw, but the fact that they couldn't tell the public. And that's what bothered all of the astronauts the most. That's what sent Borman overboard and a few others. They were really bitter at NASA for not being able to tell the truth about what's going on.
Yeah, but strangely enough, Edgar Mitchell, the 6th man on the moon, came out here to visit me. And he was out because he was interested in all the UFO information, so on and so forth. In fact, even said that all the astronauts have gotten together and they have kind of a powerful group that they formed. I don't remember what they called it. But he didn't mention anything along that.
I'm sure that in one day meeting you, he would have told his deepest, darkest secrets that NASA told him.
Well, we pointed that out to him also, so you do have a good point there.
Okay. I got to look at what I didn't check off here.
And the final questions were done. Well, John, how about this? What's your current view of the big picture? I mean, now you say we've got reptilians here where they're lying to us about survivable atmospheres and temperatures on the near planets. What do you think the big picture is? I can remember 6-7 years ago not that you were necessarily responsible for it, but UFO researchers always have something big is going to happen at the end of this year. Something big is going to happen.
That was October 92.
And I made the mistake of making several predictions. And so I don't do that anymore. I have no idea what the big...
Well, you don't need to predict a big invasion. So what do you think the status is of the big picture? Any impending doom or business as usual?
The government guys that I know, all they can say is the next 5 years are going to be very, very interesting. But we've heard that, for the last 10 years or 20 years, whatever. So it's just kind of nice to just sit back and watch and know the stuff that we know to be real and kind of see what's going on.
Real.
Well, I'm talking about the stuff you told us. I assume that's real.
So, John, what are your thoughts on the land grab out here in Central Nevada? Everyone made a big deal of it. You were among some of the first, you, Jim Goodall, Sean Morton, Gary Schultz, people like that who climbed up and viewed down on Area 51. And you...
How dare you mention John?
You in the company with John Lear and Jim Goodall. But obviously you knew that they were keeping photographic logs of, the persistent intruders, and that led to the land grab. What do you think about all the people whining about it when they actually caused the land grab?
Big deal. Area 51 is just one of many areas they've got, and they were smart to draw the attention there and get people from looking at where other stuff is going on.
You want to go ahead and take a call?
Sure.
Okay, let's go ahead and take one. Go ahead, you're on UFO line.
Hello, hi. How you doing, fellas?
Good.
All right. Season's greetings. Mr. Lear, I know you've been dealing with this for a while, and your father was did you have a lot of experiences when he was, growing up into the field he was into? Did he get a lot of experiences with seeing, quote, alien craft or unidentified flying objects?
That's a good question. And what
he didn't have a lot of experience. My dad, for those of you that aren't familiar with his background, he founded Lear Incorporated and was chairman of the board for 30 years. They were a large supplier of components for military aircraft, and he sold us in 1960. He was involved with the government in anti-gravity research from about 1957 to about 1960 down in Fort Huachuca. And he had a couple of sightings, and lots of friends of his that had a couple of sightings. It was interesting now that I look back, the people that he used to bring home are people that, were very involved with the cover-up. General Jimmy Doolittle, several of those guys that he used to bring home, and he knew a lot about it. He got a lot of criticism because he went down, I think it was to Bolivia to sell some aircraft equipment, and he was quoted by the press as saying flying saucers were real, and he got a lot of flack over that. But like I say, he used to talk about it all the time, but it didn't interest me because I'd never seen one, and I wasn't interested. I was interested in spy planes, the SR-71, stuff like that.
See, my father was in the Air Force. He was in there for like 25 years, and I lived here in Las Vegas for roughly about 23 years now. And I've had experiences. I used to live out near the Air Force Station back when that area was really was not much around there. You know how bad it is now, how much it's grown over there.
Yeah.
And I've had some experiences out there, like out in the Valley of Fire and stuff. I've had some experiences, and I had to go up to the hospital and everything, the military hospital up there. They kept me up there for like 5 days, and taking tests on me and doing whatnot on me to find out what happened. And I know that when I came back, my parents came to pick me up from up there. My parents forgot all about it, didn't know anything about what happened. And so it's just like, to me it feels as the government went and did something with them to keep them from remembering it. But I mean, it was clear as a bell. Father was really concerned at that point in time when it first happened. But after that, it's like they don't know it. They don't remember anything about it.
Yeah, they have a very good way, the government does, of erasing people's memories. It's very good. I talked to a lady a couple of months ago who was with the Air Force and stationed at Tonopah Test Range between 1970 and 1981, and her memory for that whole time is just, there's nothing there. She has, flashes of weird stuff going on, but no real memory. Really nice lady.
See, would you What do you think they might have done? Do you know how they go about doing that?
No, I sure don't.
I think that that's something we should find out, because if a person could open up everything that quote the government from the memory, you can just barely scratch the surface of how bad the defeat the government is performing to everyone. It's a shame to say that, Smart. I love America. I would rather be here than any place else in the world. But it's a shame that there are those people that are here that are doing these things to America and to Americans.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, but I don't think there's much hope of ever bringing this out.
That's like finding who's the person that, or at least bringing the person who really killed Kennedy to justice. It's too late for that. The same that Oswald had to be a bad thief, right?
Yeah, way too late. Way too late.
Well, yeah, but I'm sure you probably already know you already have your suspicions on who was that did it, don't you?
What was it?
Oh, I bet you already have your suspicions on who was the person.
John suspects the driver of the limo shot.
I'm just saying I'm not ruling the driver out.
Well, a friend of mine, his father, was one of the Secret Service men back for the president back then. And if you look at the Zapruder film, you can see him. He's one of the guys that's on the side of the road.
Is that right?
Yeah, and you know how like when people do a little bit of drinking, they tell you about a lot of things that they're not supposed to talk about.
Right.
And then you know how they confiscated a lot of that film. He had some film and he put it on. He let us look at it. Now he told us times and dates and everything of how they were planning on having him assassinated. And 12 days prior to that they were going to assassinate him, they changed the whole route.
Oh yeah, there's no question about that.
From the case, and from the position I saw that, I actually saw the fatal shotgun fired from the front.
I think the curious thing about the Zapruder film is the very, 7 seconds or whatever you generally get to see, and all of the shots before the president got there, all the shots of the grassy knoll, of everywhere, just general area shots. Someone has that somewhere. It preceded all of that on the film, and that's what...
Well, what was that photographed? Do we know that?
Well,
yeah, there was Zapruder film taken before the little clip you always see of Kennedy.
Of the grassy knoll and around the general area?
I think I saw that on Arts and Entertainment.
Yeah.
Huh. I didn't know that was actually photographed by him.
Yeah, I saw the one. I know what you're talking about too, about the driver. Bill was his name, and I know his last name and stuff like that. But he's dead now, and like I said, it wouldn't make a difference now because he's not going to be brought to trial. And
is he dead? I thought he was alive and living in Georgia or something like that.
No, I heard that yet. He died sometime since 91, I think. Mysteriously, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for the call.
And thank you for taking the time, and I sure hope to hear you guys show again. Maybe they can extend it to 2 hours.
Oh, I hope not.
Let's start earlier.
They need to give you guys a lot more publicity because I don't think that they're advertising for you guys correctly. I think that just like...
Well, that's kind of our fault. We really don't even feel like coming down.
It's a casual thing, but thanks for the call.
Yeah, thanks for calling.
And may you guys never sleep under Rudolph for the post-nasal drip.
All right.
I hate that when that happens.
Okay,
see you in meetings.
All right.
Bye-bye.
I miss that.
All right, what's the difference? Anyway, if you'd like to give us a call, the number is 731-1230, and if you're on a cell phone, you can hit star 1230 if you'd like to ask John Lear, Bob Lazar, or any of us any questions. John, you're somewhat of a central hub. You're a high-profile guy, and a lot of people approached you to tell you stories about being abducted. And I know that a lot of people even approached you that work at Nellis Air Force Base and other places. Can I presume that you conclude by now that not all of these people can be crazy and not all of them are searching for attention? I mean, you've seen a number of people. What about, we get asked all the time about whatever happened to John Grace, the guy that wrote those...
Vladimir Valerian.
Vladimir moved to Oregon, and he has a real nice business going. He still writes that, I forget what the name of his magazine was, but... he's doing well.
What did he do for Nellis? Didn't he work for Nellis?
Yeah, he was a tech sergeant, and he worked in, I'm trying to think, it's been so long ago. I was over to his office a couple times.
Huh. Well, how about the Area 51 report?
Oh, the Area 51 report.
Area 51 report.
This is going to be a weekly thing.
Boy, there's so much stuff going on. First of all, up at Groom, we have 2 new proof of concepts ready to fly. One will fly next week, and the other around March, and both are very, very fast. And you remember that helicopter we built about 10 years ago that could carry around 250 troops? Now we have one that can carry 600 fully armed combat-ready troops. And over at Sandia, they have that new, remember Sandia, that new base they built over there on Paiute Mesa. They have a new computer that is 1 billion times faster than the fastest in commercial use today. Hey, do you know who invented the Internet? It was DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and they did it in 1967. What they foresaw was the exponential use of the personal computer and saw the Internet as a direct way into homes, hearts, and minds of the public. This computer up at Sandia can track what anybody ever wrote or said or wherever anybody ever went on the Internet with their PC. And not only that, whether your PC is on or not, they can access your hard drive anytime they want. And hey, what's going on at Tonopah? We have the new counterinsurgency airplane that's being used out at Aviano in the Bosnian conflict. The security is so tight up at TTR that now they have 3 fences instead of 1, and the entire support team, which consists of about 350 people, are billeted right out the flight line instead of back down at the gate like when the F-117 came out. And speaking of the 117A, whatever happened to the F-19? The F-19 went down the Skunk Works assembly line right next to the 117, used the same engines, 404s, but was a Navy bird and was a Batwing type aircraft. They made about 60 of them. It turns out that the F-117A was just a cover for this other high-techer. And whoa, what's flying out of the northern Nevada secret facilities? It's black and it's fast. All you can see at night is a contrail which looks like a green neon tube about 1 mile long. They've been doing some low-altitude work around Idaho between midnight and 4 a.m. That dude really gets along about 4,000 or 5,000 miles an hour at low altitude. And flying saucers? Apparently the aliens can't fly any better now than they could in 1947 because we recovered 2 of them in the past year right here in Nevada. One came down between the dam and Kingman about a month or so ago, and one in northern Nevada last year. And that's it for the test site update. For Friday, December 22nd, 1995, this is John Lear and Bob Lazar wishing all of you at Det 1, and hey, don't want to forget you guys over at Station 9, a very Merry Christmas. Bob?
Now, who can argue with that?
You're right.
No.
Oh, I got to jump on the computer. Let me see that little sheet of paper. They can access your hard drive in a PC, whether or not your computer's on.
Yeah. Hard to believe.
Yeah, about as hard as you can get. Now, exactly how would they manage a seat like that?
Well, I don't know.
Aside from them coming over and turning it on.
All I'm telling you is what I heard.
From where did you hear that?
Bill Cooper.
Good old Bill. He takes a lot of flack, but you know, we named the disease that Bill Cooper got, that many of us got, was called the UFO disease.
Right.
And the UFO disease is when you start out in this business and you hear, you know, and see some stuff that really happens, real, but you start adding on to it. And like Bill, he just got too far out. He started taking stuff that I had in my files and that he read that in the, and
that's my favorite story.
In fact, maybe you should, please our audience and tell them the story about O.H. Krill. That O.H. Krill was a name that you and John Grace had given to.
Yeah, for the people that don't know who O.H. Krill was, that John Grace, who then worked for the Air Force, wrote a treatise or something on aliens that he wanted to felt the public should know, and I forget what it was all about, but he didn't want to put his name, so he said, well, how can we, whose name can we use? And I said, well, you know, the Navy had an incident that they supposedly contacted an alien in the late 50s, and the name was Krill, K-R-L-L-L. Why don't we call this guy Krill, K-R-I-L-L, and it'll be just kind of an inside joke. And so John says, okay, and how about some initials? And I said, I don't know, pick one. He said, O-H. So then John...
Which stood for only hostage or something like that? Original hostage, yeah.
Well, that wasn't our intent. That was just picked out of thin air.
Oh, was it? Okay.
And then when Bill Cooper got a hold of this story, he had seen that in the Navy, and the O-H stood for original hostage, and we just picked those initials out of thin air.
You're right, and he had read that whole report when he was there.
Yeah.
So about this flying disc that there was an alien piloted flying disc that crashed between Boulder Dam and Kingman in the last month?
Supposedly, that's what I...
And what, was it able to fly away, or did someone have to go pick it up and truck it up?
No, supposedly there was some staged chemical accident or road accident or something where people were diverted from the dam for a day or so that they could recover that thing.
Oh, that's what that story was behind that spill down there.
Was there really a spill?
Well, they did close. I remember in recent months they did close the dam up.
Somebody told me that, and I remember
down through Laughlin and Searchlight.
I remember that there was an accident with some Taiwanese or something, but I didn't remember a spill. And when the guy told me this story, I was trying to think, no, I didn't remember a spill.
Now, where was the other crash? You said there were two of them.
Supposedly in northern Nevada.
Oh, and why do you think it is that these things crash? Especially if I'm presuming these are capable of interstellar travel, or are they some type of scout ships out of a mothership? I'm just curious as to why they would be able to fly here from another star system and then crash so routinely.
That question's asked a lot of times. I don't know why they crash. Maybe they don't get enough simulator training.
Boy, I don't know.
So
it's so hard for me to digest this. I mean, I can understand. Well, I'm not even going to start a fight.
So, are you?
Go ahead. We'll start it here, and we can end it up in the Area 51 bar when we get out of here.
So, have you been welcomed back into the general UFO community? I remember, wasn't it in the early '90s that they tried to ban you from the MUFON convention here in Las Vegas?
Yeah, I hosted the MUFON
didn't
convention.
Some guy quit because you?
Yeah, a couple guys quit MUFON, and I hosted the MUFON convention here in 1989, I guess it was, and it was real popular, but I kind of was disinvited. I couldn't speak at my own hosted convention, and I did a little talking through 91, 92, but it cost me 2 good jobs, so I quit talking about UFOs at all. The one job was American Transair. I was a captain there for 6 years. And they hauled me in one day, and they said, "You don't actually believe in flying saucers, do you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do." And they said, "Well, we can't have anybody working here flying passengers who believes that." So I lost that one. Then the next one I had was with Orbital Sciences, and Orbital Sciences operates the L-1011 that carries the Pegasus rocket that launches payloads into space. And I was hired as a project pilot, and the senior project manager called me up one day and said, "John, we applied for your clearance, and I don't know what you've done, but neither the U.S. Air Force or NASA wants you on this program." So that was the second job. So I kind of lie pretty low now.
Mm-hmm. You need to pay those bills, huh?
Absolutely.
So listen, you've been around, certainly involved with ufology as long as just about anyone. You've seen the personalities evolve, unfold, and even change. So maybe we could go down the line here and hear some gossip and exactly what your thoughts are on these people, how they started off, and what their stance is now. For instance, let's start off with Stanton Friedman.
My buddy, Stanton.
Obviously, Stanton Friedman did a lot of good things. He went to bat, certainly believes that the Earth is being visited by life from elsewhere. Specializes in the old-fashioned MUFON stuff. Here's some crossed-out Freedom of Information Act documents, blah, blah, blah. In recent days on the Internet, I've seen a lot of criticism of Friedman that out somewhere he won't answer questions for people unless they buy one of his books, and he signs it, and people have attributed some sort of a change in his personality. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I haven't talked to Stan in many years. I really thought he did a good job as far as he went. What turned me off to Stanton Friedman is that when Bob came out and talked about working at the test site, and Stanton was in town just about the time this was all going on up at my house, and he didn't even make the slightest, request to meet Bob or talk to him, and I wondered, here's the supposed premier UFO researcher of the century, and he doesn't even want to talk to Bob, so it kind of turned me off to Stanton.
Okay, you want to go ahead and take another call?
Sure.
Let's go ahead. Go ahead, you're on UFO line.
Yes, good evening, John. Good evening, Bob. Is Gene Huff there?
Yes.
Well, good evening, Gene.
Good evening.
Greetings from the Billy Goodman happening.
Goodman happening.
I'm not there, but Billy's going to be listening to this tape shortly. And
how you doing, Billy?
Right. Actually, the reason we decided to do this show is we missed the old Billy Goodman show here in town, and tried to get some late night talk going.
Well, you're doing an exceptional job, and I'm glad that, Bob, the last time that you spoke on the air was on The Happening, as far as I know, remember?
Probably so.
Yeah.
Yeah, the old Vegas world.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
we had an afternoon show there for a short time.
Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to give you my regard.
Is Billy doing a UFO? Is the Scientific Spiritual Happening still going?
Oh, he's doing a show back out of Providence, Rhode Island.
Oh, he's still up there.
3 to 6 every afternoon, 5 days a week.
Right.
WSUB out of Connecticut actually is where the station is at right now.
Well, Billy's a great host, and he was always a good time. People criticized him because he let anything go, but that provided for a fun show as he didn't pass judgment on everyone. Like we're just getting ready to do right now.
Well, John, the last time I saw you was over there at El Dorado High School.
Yeah, I remember that.
And, of course, Bob came out that night, and it was nice to see.
Not willingly, of course.
No, of course not willingly, but at least it was nice to see you both together. So, Merry Christmas and season's greetings to you and everyone else.
All right, thanks for the call. Say hi to Billy for us.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
He'll hear this.
Okay.
Right,
thanks.
bye.
And I did want to tell you, or cover one thing. I think I told you both. I was south of town here meeting a guy on some business, and this guy grew up in New Mexico, just about 60 miles north of Farmington. He's about 70 years old, and we get to talking, and we're talking about, something totally unrelated with UFOs. And in the conversation, he said that he was a roughneck for working for El Paso Natural Gas. And he started talking about seeing this thing land. And I said, what year was that? And he said, 1948. And he starts talking about a disc. And I realized I'm talking to one of the only guys that's ever come forward that was at the crash at Aztec. Now, you know that Bill Steinman wrote the book Crash at Aztec, and it's been thoroughly discredited by Bill Moore and all those guys, but there is a lot of good information, and I always believed it to be real, but I never met anybody who actually saw it. This guy was one of 5 workers at El Paso Natural Gas that were standing there in Hart Canyon when this thing crashed. It was 100 feet in diameter. It had a small hole in one of the windows that they could peek in and see. There was 4 aliens on the main deck, and apparently there was some on a lower deck. And they were there for 5 hours before the military got there and rounded them up and sworn to secrecy and all that. And this guy has never told anybody the story in all these years. He's 70 years old now. But it was pretty interesting. I went home. I talked to him first and I tried to see if maybe he'd read Bill Steinman's book, but no, he hadn't. So I went home and got the book and brought it back. And he read it for a couple of days, and then I came back and interviewed him. And there's some maps and drawings in Bill Steinman's book, and he told me what was true and what was false. There was a picture of a pole being poked through this hole in the window to catch the latch and open the door. And he said the pole in the book is much too big. It was a thin rod that came off one of the welding trucks with El Paso Natural Gas. He also in Bill Steinman's book, it said helicopters came there, and he said when I was there was no helicopters. But he said it was really an interesting experience that he never told anybody about it, and it was kind of neat to meet the guy.
How was that covered up? I mean, something 100 feet in diameter, I imagine people saw that inbound, so on and so forth.
Well,
and, they must have had a cover story.
It was such a remote area. I mean, there wasn't that many people around there. This was just, an Aztec, New Mexico.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with where that is.
Well, it's east of Farmington, and it's a very desolate area.
Farmington, if I remember, is almost on the edge of the state.
The police chief was one of the guys that was there, and they briefed him on secrecy. He was later given a job in Long Beach as the police chief there for 20 years and then moved back to Farmington. And Bill Steinman interviewed him, and he just refused to talk about, just even refused to discuss the incident.
That brings to mind what I just forgot. What's that other
left his mind at the same time?
Right.
John,
Dulce.
Okay. No, it doesn't.
What are your current views on that? Do you still think that there is an underground base in Dulce?
Absolutely.
You know what story I'm referring to?
Absolutely.
The guy that got out of there and the vats of amber-colored liquid.
Beyond a shadow of a doubt, I have.
Why? You know that there have been plenty of people gone up there snooping around.
Oh, yeah, and there's no signs there saying secret underground base, and the Indians...
No, of course not, but I mean, they've, covered the mountains. These guys were UFO enthusiasts like yourself, and they were, would have been more than happy to find anything. I mean, they didn't find any even ground disturbance.
Well, did you see any of the work that Jim Delatoso did?
No.
Well, he spent 6 weeks there with real sensitive recording monitors, and they monitored all kinds of power and stuff being generated around there. It's been 4 or 5 years. So they measure
electromagnetic emissions?
It's been 4 or 5 years since they talked about this, so I don't have a lot of this stuff off the top of my head, but it was a very good videotape on what was going on in Dulce. And
do you think anything is still there, or if it's still in existence?
Yeah, sure. The Air Force guy that I know that was there refers to it not as Dulce, but I think he called it Section D.
What about the guy from Los Alamos, whose name I can't remember either? My memory is so fantastic. The guy we both know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think we better not mention his name because he works up at Tessa.
Well,
Tom? Wasn't that his name, Tom?
We called him Poofon or something, yeah.
I know you.
Wasn't he a preacher?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you started insulting Jesus and everything, and then...
I did
not do that this near his birthday, okay? John, you brought up Bill Moore before, and Bill Moore always seems to take it personally upon himself, even if it's transparent, to try and discredit anything that he has not sponsored or anything he has not approved yet. I remember George Knapp and I met with him a few years ago when he came up here, and Moore said that he didn't believe Bob Lazar's story, but he had some information that actually there was an alien settlement out in central Nevada before the white man moved west. And we made jokes about how surprised the pioneers must have been when they came over.
Right, over on their wagon.
Covered wagon like a Twilight Zone episode, and there was a flying disc base there. But what do you think Bill Moore is up to? Why do you think he feels compelled to try and squelch anything that surfaces that he is not sponsored?
I think it goes back to the cover-up where everybody thinks the Air Force is in charge. They're not. It was the Navy. The Navy's always been in charge of the cover-up, and they use the Air Force as a whipping boy. Now, the Air Force, what Bill Moore got hooked up with was AFOSI, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, and what they were trying to find, they themselves wanted to know what was going on. So they enlisted Bill to pass around, some good information, some disinformation to ferret out the truth. And I think he got mixed up with AFOSI, and they don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. What was the disinformation that Bill Moore spread around?
He claims to have fabricated the Benowitz deal in Dulce, and there's a bunch of other stuff.
Fabricated the Benowitz deal?
Yeah. He was the one that supposedly fed Benowitz the information on Dulce.
Huh. Okay.
So, as we march down the UFO gossip list, what do you think of Linda Howe? I think A Strange Harvest still stands. When did it came out, in 1979 or 1980?
That was very good.
And it was a great film, and it was down to earth. And lately, she's been called every name in the book because she has gotten UFO researcher syndrome and spread out, and now she speaks her mind on crop circles and numerous other areas as pretty much a correspondent. Do you think that Linda has degenerated or deteriorated as a credible info source?
I haven't heard what Linda said in the past year.
She had a big deal about an asteroid running into the Earth.
Yeah, I remember it. That was about 4 or 5 years ago.
That's when we started calling her Chicken Little.
Yeah, on the internet I read that she was on some other radio show here in town and played an audio tape of a crowd of people running from Bigfoot. So, it happened.
Oh, that's right. She's on. Is she on that other Art Bell show?
I don't know. I've never heard it, but I just see people talking about it on the internet, and
yeah, I haven't heard. But Strange Harvest, both the book and the gotten after and criticized. And this guy comes on, Bill Cooper, and he says, "I can't vouch for all of what Lear says, but I can vouch for 50% of what he says because I saw it in the Navy." So I invited Bill up and I talked to him. He said, "Yeah, I worked in the office of Pearl Harbor," and he said, "I was helped the briefing team get out the projector." Now later he became part of the briefing team, but all he was the guy that brought the projector up. And he said he had keys to the safe, and he would sit at night and read these documents, and that's where he originally came up with a lot of this stuff. So we talked for a while, and unfortunately, I think I contributed to his downfall because I gave him copies of all my research stuff that I had collected. And pretty soon, maybe a month or two later, not only could he vouch for 50% of what I said, he could now vouch for 150% of what I was saying. And it just went from there. It just got so far out that it was ridiculous. But Bill Cooper did start out, and he honestly did see those papers in the Navy.
Mm-hmm. Well, if I remember correctly, amongst those papers, he said he saw documents about that the military was actually involved in the Kennedy assassination. Now, they may have been involved, but I find it difficult to believe that there would be any hard copy alluding to that laying around that a chief petty officer could get in and read. Don't you find that hard to believe?
Yeah, but as he told me the story, he had the keys to safe where all this was locked up. And I think the Kennedy thing was one of the things that he vouched for before all this rest of the information got mixed up in.
And I am sitting here with two imposters. You guys are never this nice off the radio. I am just dumbfounded.
Listen, we got to talk about something. So Cooper was the assistant to the commander of the Pacific Fleet. Do I remember that correctly?
No, it's been 6 years since I talked about that.
The first time Cooper said anything, or the only thing I ever heard him say directly, was at your house, John, and the only thing he had claimed at that time was that he was on a ship and saw a UFO come out of the water, tumbling into the sky, and that was it. And
later it came tumbling back down in the water, and 2 years later that object had become the size of 2 aircraft carriers.
Right. But
it was that big.
Let's see, who else should we gossip about? Let's go down the list. Tim Good, I've never heard anyone say anything bad about Tim Good.
John will say something bad about Tim Good.
Because Tim Good was a good friend. I saw him a couple times in England. He came out here. I drove him up to the test site with his girlfriend who smoked in the back of the van when she wasn't supposed to. And, showed him hospitality. When he wrote that book, he wrote two things that were really dishonest. He said, John privately admitted to me that two of his sources had turned out to be bogus. And I said, who would those two sources be, Tim? And he said, well, one is Bill Cooper. I said, Bill Cooper was never my source. I was his source. And the other one was, he said, Benowitz. And I said, I've never thought that Benowitz was wrong. I always thought that Benowitz was correct about the stuff he talked about. So he promised to retract it in his next book, and he never did. So I'm still a little ticked off at Tim Good.
So what do you think of the push nowadays? They had the budget office investigating the Roswell crash, and it seems to me that the opponents of the Roswell crash are a lot more vociferous nowadays. Now that Jesse Marcel is dead, they walk on his grave. They act like he's an idiot, a moron that he wouldn't have known what was going on. I'm specifically speaking of the Project Mogul balloon story. Don't you think that they're going way overboard and trying to discredit Jesse Marcel's intelligence?
Yeah, but the thing is, and here I go making another prediction, I don't think we're ever going to know the truth. I don't think it's in the cards ever. Every once in a while you hear, like I just heard the other day, April's going to be it, they're going to start releasing information. I don't think that they ever intend to tell anybody, because the problem is the first little bit of information will lead to more, and then people are going to want to know more and more, and they can't tell them the whole story.
And why is that? What do you think the top 2 or 3 determining factors are? I think we're beyond the point where they think people will go crazy. I think that
it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with religion. And the fact is that religion is the fabric that holds society together. People fear a God, fear that if you do something bad, there will be retribution. If you were to remove this religious factor, they think that society would start breaking down. If the first thing comes out like, oh yes, we recovered a saucer, it's from somewhere, but we don't know where, people are going to start, questioning whether God is real, that kind of thing. And I think that's what they don't want to happen.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if that would be the case. Well, they can always claim that God made the aliens too.
I always contend that ufology and theology collide head on, and the bottom line is that no one can be elected president of the United States if they say they don't believe in the
stereotypical Christian Judeo God. It says in God we trust on our money.
Absolutely.
And so...
You remember when that was put on?
No.
1962.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wasn't old enough to have any money yet then.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What did it say? Oh, it said silver certificate before that, didn't it?
In God we trust, it was put on there.
Right. And so anyway, I think that's the battle no one wants to wage. I mean, there's no sense in it. I think the real question is when we see someone like George Bush or Bill Clinton, I don't know who knows what, when we see them go to church on television, I'm curious if that's just for show and they're playing to the Bible now.
Yeah, it would be really interesting.
So let's see. We need some more UFO gossip names.
While we're thinking of gossip names, let me show you this picture of...
Hold it up so the viewers can see.
Right. Area 51. Spy 2 just sent it to me, and I got it for Christmas. And this was taken in September of 1965. And these are the two A-12 hangars, and this is the YF-12 hangar, and this was the support aircraft. They had F-101Bs and F-104s chasing the airplane during the test program. These are the U-2 hangars right here, and that's maintenance. And this is the old Groom Lake Control Tower. See that little bitty thing right there? And that was the fire station right next to it. And those are the barracks. And that, further that way, they call Baja, and that's where they kept the A-12 hangars there.
I forgot. What's the difference between the YF-12 and the SR-71? Wasn't one? It was the nose, right?
Yeah, the A-12 was the CIA bird, and that was a single-place one. And then when the Air Force, when SAC found out that the CIA was flying their own spy plane, they went to the Pentagon and said, hey, this can't happen. We're supposed to fly a spy mission. So they had Lockheed build a proof of concept, which is a two-place A-12, which became the YF-12A, and they built 3 of those. And then they built about 35 SR-71s, and the Air Force flew it on. Unbeknownst to the Air Force, the CIA kept flying them on their mission.
Well, we're about...
wait, I think we want to take one more call. Let's go ahead and take a call before we get out there. Go ahead, John, UFO line.
Hi, I called in last week, and I just heard you guys talking about the YF-12 and SR-71 differences. One thing I'd like to point out on the air that I've never heard anyone really discuss a lot about these aircraft is that the YF-12A carried 4 Hughes long-range nuclear-tipped missiles.
Yeah, they sure did.
And the Air Force was constantly trying to justify this in front of Congress. And my theory has always been that this aircraft was specifically designed to intercept UFOs at high altitudes. And the reason for this is because of the pulse Doppler radar system that aircraft carried, which would give a false signature to any aircraft that it was scanning to fire missiles at. And this was something that was totally unnecessary going up against Soviet aircraft of the time, because none of the Soviet aircraft of the time had radar warning detectors that could tell where a plane was radar scanning it from.
That's interesting. I never heard that one before.
And the YF-12A also carried cameras which were mounted below the engines on either side, which were designed for air-to-air photography, because the cameras pointed forward and rearward, whereas the spy version had cameras mounted where the missiles were, pointing downward to take photographs of land.
Right.
And it's always been my theory that the idea was to intercept the UFOs, because this thing could travel at Mach 3, and UFOs could generally have bursts of speed up to Mach 4 from a sudden stop. And this was our best hope at the time of using something to do this, because there was just nothing else available to even attempt it.
What would make you think that UFOs would be vulnerable to missile attack?
Well, if you used a pulse Doppler radar system and you were scanning them, they wouldn't be able to tell exactly where you were scanning them from. And if you fired a missile, if the missile was going at Mach 4, which it had to because the plane was traveling at Mach 3.
You're assuming that the craft are flying conventionally.
Right. If they're just hovering there. It would be a stroke of luck. This is what they would be hoping for. You've got to realize that this was the best they could do.
No, that's the first I've ever heard of.
I'm going to check with Spy 2 on those cameras. Where were they mounted now?
Well, there were 2 camera pods, one mounted under each engine, okay, and they also had radiation sniffers mounted with them, and different things that could detect anomalies.
We'll check that out.
And the cameras were mounted below the engines on pods with one camera facing forward and one facing rearward.
Well, I'll check that out.
All right.
I also wanted to ask Bob Lazar real quick about the electromagnetic pulse effect from the disk craft. Is this done with a separate generator unit inside the craft, or is it all connected to the main power unit, or?
It's all connected to the main power unit. The amplifiers are pulsed 10 microseconds apart. And that's, if you're referring to the pulse, I mean, they're each turned on sequentially like that.
So that's not a separate self-defense unit that can be removed from the craft. It's part of the way the craft works.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's just a side effect of the way the craft works.
Exactly.
I see. I also have information concerning a new warhead that the United States Air Force is putting on the new Advanced Cruise Missile, which is an electromagnetic pulse warhead. This came out in an issue of... I have the magazine around here somewhere.
Well, any nuclear warhead will produce an electromagnetic
Well, yes, but this does it without a nuclear charge. This does it using an electromagnetic coil and a small explosive charge that's just enough to destroy the missile. The idea is that this thing will produce such a massive electromagnetic pulse that it would, be used against headquarters installations, financial targets where you want to disrupt money systems.
How on earth do they achieve that?
I don't know, but it's been published in a magazine. Here it is. Here's the article. It's in fact.
What magazine is it in?
It's in an issue from July, August 1993, Journal of Military Aviation, Volume 2, Number 4. And it has a special thing in here on the upgrades on the B-52. And it says, a recent addition to the ALCM is the so-called non-lethal or disabling warheads, which are well suited for regional or low-intensity conflicts. The Air Force has disclosed the development of a non-nuclear electromagnetic pulse generator. An EMP burst is generated by creating a magnetic field in a coil and then compressing it via conventional explosives.
Okay, well, thank you for the info. We have to end UFO line for the night, but thanks for the call, and give us a call another time. We'd like to thank everybody for listening and thank our guest, John Lear. John, I hope you'll come join us again.
I sure will, John.
And we'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
We will.